Welcome back to Grab Your Brew, and if you're new, welcome. Please like and subscribe. This is week 4 of the Diddy court update, guys, and Diddy's team is starting to get scared. So scared that they accidentally doxed Mia. Go ahead and grab your brew and join me as we get into this. Mia was supposed to be anonymous, and when the government was showing the pictures, some pictures were redacted and some were not. When they showed the whole court, the pictures, well, the court, I should say, not the whole court, they were not redacted. And when they show it to the jury, it is redacted due to the public being legally able to see what the jury sees. So the overflow room and all of those people would be able to see what's on there. So then they added new pictures to the court binder. The defense asked for permission to publish, but by some mistakes, the defense team published the pictures to the jury to the overflow room, unredacted. So then, of course, everybody knew who Mia. Of course, a lot of people in the courtroom knew who Mia was, but for her own safety, she did not want everybody else to know who she was. And people should respect that and stop trying to figure out who she is, because a lot of this stuff is for safety. These are people's lives that we're messing with. So after being humiliated and demeaned all day, they went ahead and doxed her. And we have 2 days of Mia's, and we have mixed reactions on how she came across to the jury, but we'll go ahead and watch this CNN clip first. Go ahead.
The crux of the prosecution's case. These are not necessarily related, but you've got all these sprinkles of predicate crimes.
I think Mia was probably almost as important as Cassie.
Really?
Yes. Cassie was what I call the prologue witness. You know, beginning of a great book, you have a witness that sort of summarizes everything. The beauty of Mia is she corroborates a ton of what Cassie said. But that little report you just did, to me, connects a dot to the enterprise. How?
Yep.
He's using the HR department as his
He
playground.
is HR.
And she was asked on direct, why didn't you report it to HR? Because he controls it. So you are now connecting his threat, his coercion, and his fraud to his own business through the HR department. And the more I think about it, he did control the HR, because none of these testifying women have even thought about going to HR, because he probably had a flunky or flunkies in HR that were under his thumb and would do anything he wanted, including firing an employee. That connects him to the enterprise.
That's an interesting point. We have heard about people in the inner circle that have been the recipients of reports, and that they have said, I will then talk to him. But the idea of that enterprise is part of the elements. I mean, you can't just look at this in isolation. You have to connect the dots if you're the prosecution. And actually, we heard from Mia. She was one of the first, I think that's the first time we've heard someone in this trial who suggested that she could not give consent to Diddy. And I want to point out why. Because she testified about an alleged sexual assault where he gave her 2 shots that she said hit her pretty hard. Then she says Combs approached her unwanted and, quote, my next memory is I just remember being on a chair, like the main room in the penthouse, and coming to the chair and the sun was coming up. It suggests that she wasn't able to remember the series of events. That's important. Control, the coercion is not just psychological, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there was a lot of that. I think even the reporter also said that she couldn't say no to a sandwich. She also testified that if she tried to leave, he would send security out to find her. She was not free to leave. She was not there on her own free will. And with respect to the RICO charge, I have to say, her testimony supports 2 other predicate offenses. Potential forced labor. I mean, that sexual assault doesn't go to forced labor, but being forced to work 24 hours a day in a mansion that you're not free to leave sure does. Also, distribution of narcotics. She testified he forced her to try ketamine. I mean, horrific. That is not how a regular business operates. That is establishing a corrupt enterprise.
And we should point out that a business can have legitimate business operations
Yes.
and still engage in illegitimate and
Of
criminal
course, the
actions.
mob had legitimate
and create
businesses
that
too.
prosecutorial crime here we're talking about. And also, I would point out, she's an employee, not a girlfriend. So the idea of this being a romantic, jealous person that you find over Cassie, very different. But let's just talk about the idea here that she couldn't go to police. She didn't go to police. How will the cross, as defense counsel, try to undermine this? Because the words free will keep coming to my mind. I'm thinking about how would I anticipate the defense working in this? Is that the angle, that her choices is the issue?
Yeah, I think they'll try that, but I think this is a very dangerous witness
I think so too.
for them to push. I think to go after such a vulnerable witness who's obviously made such a strong impression, I think is very dangerous.
So what should they do?
Oh, on cross?
Yeah.
First off, you pray, get out your rosary. and I'm serious. If I were the defense attorneys, I would want to crawl under the table. And the thing that I used to do in my big trials, not all my trials are big, but I would always assign somebody, watch the jury. When a witness is on a stand, I want to see what the jury's doing.
Yeah.
Are they crying? Are they getting emotional? I wanted to hear more about the jury's reaction. That reporters were crying, that's a pretty good sign that her testimony was powerful. But to get to the cross, on a serious note, all I would try to do is focus politely and professionally. If you go after her hard, a destructive cross versus constructive, you're going to lose a case tomorrow. So I would just try to get into, she had an opportunity to go to the police. She had an opportunity to leave him, although the threat was real. She was enamored with his glamour. She had a job, a well-paying job, a steady job. I would just focus on that rather than going after her with any inconsistencies.
So you'd focus on the idea of that, similar to how they did for Cassie, a mixed motive for staying,
Absolutely.
as opposed to just one. Well, you seem really concerned about her being somebody optically you could go after in a destructive cross. What would you focus on?
I agree with Jean. I would go after, just the fact that she did have options, and I would be somewhat gentle with her, because I think the prospect of it blowing up in their faces is huge.
It could also highlight how important of a witness she is the more you go after, because they didn't even cross some other people. At least finally.
Now, of course, on the second day, their team went against what everybody on CNN basically advised against. Everything they recommended on CNN News, they did not do. Even the judge told Diddy's team that you need to stop humiliating this woman. There's no reason for how you're acting. Basically, you're not getting anywhere other than publicly humiliating this woman. The next surprise person who was granted immunity was Andy Garcia. And according to fellow Tisha Towels, the jury has been a little grimy. Also, they're not supposed to communicate with each other. Not at all. They are not supposed to talk about the case. They're not supposed to communicate with each other. Of course, they may go out to lunch breaks, stuff together, but they're not supposed to discuss the case or talk to each other during court. However, according to Tish Towels, whenever there was a sidebar, they would be whispering to each other, holding up something up against their mouths and passing pieces of paper around. And they're not supposed to be talking to each other, period. On top of that, Diddy kept looking at them and nodding and taking notes and talking to each other, and they all seemed very pro-Diddy, which again, not allowed.
Girl, listen, we got Mel watching the new, hold on, Miss Alice, would you consider moving to New York live to teach the Tells All show? Listen, look what we got here. Y'all know this favorite. He'd be making his rounds all over YouTube. Mel, how you doing? First of all, give them your socials, and I have some questions about what happened in the trial. Just want to get your quick opinion.
All right, Watching the World 777. Thank you guys for having me on.
Okay.
Put my book back down somehow.
Okay, you put your gift that down, because I want your opinion Again, we don't have to agree. We just have to be respectful, right? But I want your opinion. What do you actually think about what Brian still did with Mia? How did that play out to you?
I think he discredited her whole story. He did a good job doing it, but I still think that she took the biggest hit out of all the witnesses. But the problem is Capricorn stood.
She did.
So the problem is, you take an average guy like myself or some of the guys in the courthouse, one day of these charges could send you away for a long time. That's a real problem. And every day we're hearing these new charges, and now the government is in a place where they're pulling up hotel records, and they get into American Express. They already told us that on Friday they have the sex worker that was involved on the day of the actual beating that we saw on CNN, that he's on the metadata of the camera in the hotel. He's also in Cassie's text messages. They also, as we saw today, we're starting to see the hotel records. We're seeing the credit card records. This is a big problem. And while everybody else has their own opinions, like for instance, okay, it came out in court for the burglary.
Okay.
For Kid Cudi, it was actually labeled on the police report as a trespass, not a burglary. But still, the way the narrative came together, they pretty much put Diddy on the spot. So this case is a problem, and every day they're slow cooking. I do think that there are some jury members that could swing, but I think ultimately the government they have an overwhelming amount of evidence here, and it's going to be a problem.
I agree with that. One more question before you go. When you say that you think that they did a good job completely discrediting Mia, right? Explain why you think that is. Like how they ripped her apart.
You know what? It wasn't even them. It was Mia herself. On Thursday, she had her head down all day. And today, the prosecutors, they tried to use, hey, Mia, why do you keep your head down when you're talking about what Diddy did to you? Oh my God, he did me so, whatever, right? I was terrified. But the problem was, she gave this testimony all day Thursday, and I'm sitting there all day. Tisa's there all day. We're like one of the two that's always in the courtroom. The next day, when they went through her text messages and all of that stuff, she went into this whole new person, whole new persona, D-Rock. And, she says, they had her read a text message from Diddy. I love you, Diddy. Like, when she said that, I was done with her. This is not the female that, now I'm not saying she wasn't abused.
No, tell me what.
I really can't say that. I don't know. But I'm just telling you, when I see two different personalities going on, it just made me uncomfortable. And then Brian still did like a stellar job at really, he was a technician, and he broke her down one step by step. Mm-hmm. Now, does it affect the overall case? I don't think so, because every day the government is laying it out. It's a big problem. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Make sure y'all follow Mel. Watch it.
There's a lot of strong witnesses.
On YouTube and TikTok. All right.
We are going to collab. He is Mr. Busy, but when he gets time, we're going to have it on your channel for you to break things down.
I always got time for the Tisa crew. They come over and they say, hey, when you come over, say you're from Tisa, and I'll give you a cup of coffee.
All right. Thank you, Mel. See you tomorrow.
One last thing.
What's up?
For all the men, don't abuse women and children. Don't abuse anybody. That's the new message. Right?
Thank you. And y'all see why I rock with Mel. At the end of the day, there's so many people making excuses. Oh, Diddy did this. Cassie was this. Mel said it. For all the men and women who want to be, but it's more men, that want to be abusers, the gig is up. You cannot keep doing that. That whole rock star lifestyle, the blow, the hose, it's over. All right? You're going to have to.
So when they say they discredit her, they're not by any means saying that she's lying. A lot of people do not believe she's lying by any means. What it means is she's lost the jury. However, the next day they brought it back with pulling the jailhouse phone calls, and of course we had Garcia. But before that, a woman got dragged out of the courtroom before the jury even got there, screaming, oh, they're just trying to discredit Diddy and ruin his legacy. Let's take a look at this.
This happened first thing this morning. It was outside of the presence of the jury. We were actually talking, or not we, as far as the press is going, but the arguments were about Mia's testimony and possibly introducing some jail calls. So I was listening, taking notes, and then all of a sudden I'm hearing screaming going on. And it's from a woman who we've been kind of noticing has been causing a couple of troubles here and there, just as far as court goes. She was removed from the overflow room during jury selection, and she was removed from the main courtroom today during these arguments. And so I'm writing down my notes, I'm jotting everything down, but even just the backstory of this particular woman, we in the press have been referring to her as the MTA lady. It's not necessarily confirmed whether or not she actually works for MTA, but she always kind of comes in with an MTA jacket, and that's how we kind of have remembered her. So I'm just going to give you guys the low that we had kind of had bets with amongst us in the press just about how long it would take before something like this were to happen again, because we were thinking that she would cause trouble just right off the bat. And then lo and behold, it didn't take very long for her to kind of stir up some trouble and for the marshals to escort her out. So from what I heard, it was just cussing, it was yelling, mainly from her. And then I saw just 4 marshals just try to grab her. She was saying things along the lines of, oh, use your gun against me, that type of thing. And she was threatened, I believe, with the taser, but that didn't happen. We didn't see any of that. And so from our understanding is after this incident, after kind of the marshals escorted her outside of the courtroom, as far as what was going on inside for the judge, he went back to business as usual. But from my understanding, she was just kind of dismissed from the courthouse altogether, and likely won't be able to come back in, and likely won't be able to come back in the courtroom too. But even as far as just the incident of somebody revealing Mia's true identity and I guess saying this over a live stream or in a video, that type of thing, that was also brought up shortly after the incident of the woman having the outburst inside the courtroom today. And so what we did learn about that, it was somebody who was actually sitting on our side of the press, not with a NYC verified press credential, nothing like that, but what it's been kind of alleged is that it was somebody sitting on our side who kind of works for a blog or a media outlet, that type of thing, and that after court yesterday was doing this video, doing this live stream, and was essentially talking about Mia and wasn't referring to Mia as her pseudonym, was instead referring to Mia as her true identity. And so what AUSA Emily Johnson discussed with the judge today is that she didn't see this individual inside the courtroom today, so there was no further, I guess, talk about what was to happen next, but if this person were to show up once again, then they'll definitely.
Now, of course, Garcia was on the stand today, and I don't know if you guys remember in the earlier episode where we were playing the video of Cassie being drugged and beat through the hallway. Terrible. But you remember when you saw the security guard walking around, and I said, why was he not a witness? Why was he not charged too? Well, Garcia is that man. Now, I do want you all to remember he's 33 now, but he was only 24 and working for a third-party security company at the time. Eddie Garcia has been granted an immunity deal for any involvement in this testimony, so... Oh, it was messy. It was messy.
Where you see on the day of this incident that we see Eddie had worked from 2 p.m. till 1:30 in the morning. And so we saw some extra overtime because he normally gets off at 10 p.m. But instead on that day, he got off at 1:30 in the morning. And so he was saying after this incident occurred that we know from Officer Israel Flores' testimony that Diddy was kind of trying to buy his way out of this, trying to say like, hey, I got some money, can you make this go away? But then from Eddie Garcia's perspective, he said he got a phone call from somebody, and it wasn't necessarily Diddy at first, but we heard from him today that Christina Coram had called him, and he said he was even kind of nervous and a little apprehensive about how Christina Coram got not only his work number but his personal cell phone number too. And so then there was kind of a sidebar, and the sidebar was pretty lengthy because right before the sidebar had happened, Christina Coram said something along the lines to Eddie Garcia that Diddy was intoxicated that night and didn't remember what was going on, but they were pretty much trying to obtain the one and only version of that security tape. They wanted to buy it off of the hotel, and initially they were going to purchase it for about $50,000. However, Diddy gave them double that of money. He gave them $100,000, understand that money was divvied up pretty much. It was divvied up $50,000 to the director, or it was divvied up $50,000 to Bill, who was the director of security. Henry Elias, who also works at the hotel, was given $20,000. Eddie Garcia kept $30,000 to himself and actually used the money to buy a used car. Then we kind of slowly got into what Eddie had to do in return for this money, and that was to sign an NDA. We saw kind of a copy of this NDA inside the courtroom where it was pretty much saying that you're not to discuss this. You're signing away that you are giving away the one and only copy. And as far as Eddie Garcia is concerned, he said the next time he saw that this video, because he thought that he had turned over the one and only copy through a thumb drive to Diddy, he thought that was done. He thought that this incident was over. He was going about his business until he saw the video once again playing on CNN. And it's a video that a lot of us have seen at this point, and possibly even some jurors too.
Yeah, I find that fascinating because legitimately, you know, this goes, as we've been talking about, to the bribery allegation, one of the underlying crimes of racketeering. And clearly, the issue of him, you know, not being essentially bought off and not being cooperative with law enforcement and not reporting it, you could see why he needs some sort of protection. Real quick, I know you have to jump back, but in 1 minute, 2 minutes, what was the cross-examination about?
Yeah, the cross-examination went pretty quick. So we saw an exhibit photo of the NDA again, but exclusions from the NDA, where it said a disclosure of confidential information in response to valid order by a court or other government body, or B, as otherwise required by law, will not be breach of this agreement or a waiver of confidentiality for other purposes. Then we saw the non-disparagement portion of that NDA, and that was a non-disparagement against Combs or Combs parties. And then the final question from Brian Steele, who did the cross-examination, was whether or not Eddie Garcia went to law enforcement with this information. And then, spoiler alert for the redirects, he was kind of asked that same question, and he said he did report it to law enforcement. It just wasn't police, it wasn't LAPD. Instead, it was federal agents when he had first talked about this incident and everything that came afterwards, too.
With that being said, let's go ahead and listen to the legal perspective with Sidebar and see what they think is going to happen.
The money, who oversaw the transactions, so that we could see the connection of all of this happening, because a lot of this happened with cash transactions. So I want to see that. I also need to look at this whole RICO conspiracy. Who are the other people? I want to hear from security guards. I have to hear from those people who are protecting Combs, because Combs wasn't driving himself around. Combs wasn't, going out and getting candles. He was getting other people to get this. All of those people who we haven't heard from, who were protecting him, those are the people who are going to be key, and I think that we will definitely hear from them, and I think that we need to.
Rich?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I sort of agree with that. I think we need to see the bona fides of the RICO claim here. I think we need to see what exactly the enterprise it is. There are conspiracy allegations here. We need to see somewhat of an agreement to commit criminal predicate acts and a pattern of racketeering activity. That's what RICO is. It's not abuse. It's not domestic violence. It is a pattern of racketeering activity. And I do think we need to, I totally agree with Candace, I think we need to follow the money. We need to connect it to the accounts, and we need to put the whole enterprise together so that we can make this RICO claim stick.
So I'm going to get Afi's answer to this later on. I know we're working on some technical issues with her. But Candace, I'll throw another question to you. I was just talking about Eddie Garcia's testimony. This is a question from RSS. Are there any penalties for Eddie initially lying to the police about the Intercontinental Hotel video?
Well, not now. And now that he has immunity, that's off the table. I mean, if he lies on the stand or was lying today, that's one thing, because if you perjure yourself, that's not protected. But he came in yesterday. He signed what he needed to do in order to be protected for today. And because it was a subpoena, he said he didn't want to be here, obviously, but he came full throttle, but he's safe so far.
Candace, let me throw another question to you. This is from Rel. Can you bribe someone who's not a law enforcement officer?
Yeah. Well, sure. Sure, you can bribe someone that's not a law. You can really bribe anyone, especially if the goal is to suppress evidence, if the goal is to obstruct justice, if the goal is to hide something illegal that you were trying to do, and that's what the financial transaction was for, that in the name of the law would be illegal, certainly that bribery would stick like anybody else.
So again, we're taking your questions in right now. We're also waiting for court to start. We will give you real-time updates and a real-time breakdown for the next hour or so because we don't need to miss any moment of this trial. Rich, I'll go to you. We got a question from Fragility G4. If Diddy is acquitted, does double jeopardy apply only to federal charges, or can a state press similar charges?
So a state could press theoretically different charges. You don't usually see a state prosecuting RICO charges anyway, since that's a federal statute. But remember, there are issues because a lot of the things we're talking about are a long time ago and out of the statute of limitations. So I don't really know. I'd have to sort all through it to see if a state could still make some hay here if he's acquitted.
And the argument is, the argument against the prosecution is because there are statute of limitations issues, they have taken these allegations, and again, this is the argument for the defense or people in Sean Combs' camp, they've manufactured it, they've transformed it into a complicated federal case. There are those, even though we're talking about it, who say, I still don't see racketeering, I still don't see sex trafficking, it feels like a reach, I don't think they've reached those elements, but this is why you can bring similar conduct that may have had an overlap with state charges, right? I mean, the 2016 attack, theoretically, he could have been charged at the state level for that, but it was too old. Obviously, now we know there's issues of where the video was. But at the same time, it could be an element. It could be evidence of racketeering or evidence of sex trafficking. So you see that overlap there. Okay. Candace, we've got a question from Christina Lester. Why is arson such a specific predicate of RICO? If he'd just taken a baseball bat, a golf club to Kid Cudi's car, would it not qualify for RICO?
All of this rolls into one guy.
Well, listen, there are 35 predicate crimes that you need for RICO. It has to be on that list. This is what the law was determined to be in 1970, albeit for mafia. But it happens to be on that list, and that's why arson is specific. It is a very serious crime, right? It's not a misdemeanor on any level. So because it's so serious and because it was involved with so many people in terms of when you look at it on a mafia level, it made the list. It just has to be one of these things on the list. And that's why it's important. It has to be on that list.
I've got a question here, Rich, from Lisa. This is a great question. KK, so Christina Coram. This is Sean Combs' former chief of staff, right? The head of the personal assistants, I would say. This is somebody who I actually dedicated another sidebar to yesterday about her role and how much she's been mentioned. KK has now been implicated at the hotel trying to get the tape and calling the security guard. Is she part of RICO and will have to get immunity? So will she testify?
I don't know if she'll testify. That's an interesting question. I don't know if they've offered her immunity to testify. Or theoretically, if she hasn't been offered immunity, she might plead the fifth instead of testifying because she would be implicating herself. So I don't actually know what's going to happen.
And of course, we have our reliable source at the Inner City Press giving us a quick update. Keep in mind, guys, he is live tweeting because he covers all court infos, not just the Diddy case. He does court reporting. That's the only reason why he's allowed any technology in the courtrooms. So he has a right to be in there. But Inner City Press tells us that Diddy himself almost got kicked out the courtroom today. Well, not today, but this week.
Really on redirect. They just said, you're not in it for the money, are you? And you can't remember everything. But the metadata, it's not a question, I mean, she's only one witness. So what I want to get to in the brief time we have before it restarts is during the break, after the jurors were out, Judge Subramanian told Agnifilo, your client has been smiling and nodding at jurors and it can't continue. And if it does, I'll give a limiting instruction, which you won't like, or I'll have your client removed from the courtroom. Now, people ask me, is it that possible? It is. There's a criminal rule of criminal federal procedure Anyway, FRCP 43 says that it can be once a warning has been given and reasons are put on the record, and the trial can proceed. So we'll see if it comes to that. There's some juror stuff that is also of some concern. I don't know what the judge is going to do about it. What the judge said about the upcoming witness, Jane, he read a warning that there should be no recording in notes or sketches of the witness. Now, this is a problem. Like, I'm sorry to say it, but do notes mean written notes? Because that's the whole point of the press being here, is that we're writing. No one wants to, they put an exhibit on the screen of the previous witness, apparently by mistake, but there was no way to know it was a mistake. But now, this more recent one, I think I'm fully committed to the pseudonymous thing. But I think it was important. There was some legal argumentation, but nothing about this idea that no notes can be taken. They're here in Kim Lau Square, as I call it. Some call it Chatham Square. Federal judges are crossing the street. It's Chinatown. It's lunchtime, and it's the Sean Combs trial reaching new peaks. We're working already on week 4 of Diddy on trial. Week 3 is available, in part to rebut some ridiculous reports that are coming out. But fact is getting stranger than fiction. We're going in Inner City Press.
Next, we have an update from our Trish outside the courthouse. On her live, she's telling us how Diddy's CEO was digging herself, and Diddy agreed.
And 90% of people, I'm going to give y'all a little tea on what's going on in the courthouse. Then we're going to get into how Diddy's CFO destroyed Diddy, okay? It was actually really funny to see. It was literally a mic drop moment. And Mark Agnifilo, you should have never sent Mark Agnifilo in there to do Brian Still's job. Mark Agnifilo, he was feeling himself. He saw the way that Brian Still literally, to quote the prosecutors, humiliated Mia. And he stood up, Yana, I would like to talk. And he was like, is it? Now I'll give you a preview. He was like, is it not true that you never saw Sean Diddy Combs do any violence? And he was like, no, I haven't. And right when I said that, I put my pen down and I said, now, Mark, we all heard about Shakira Stewart. We all heard about Kurt Burrows. We all heard about Chris Light. We all heard about Steve Stout. And artists said when they were partnered with Bad Boy, are you really trying to tell us in 2025
Are you trying to tell us our
on
lies?
Al Gore's internet that Diddy, nobody in his office knew that mole was violent? I said, you're going a step too far, Mike Axenfilio. Sheer D, thank you so much for the super chat. All right, now get this, right? So then, this is where he messed up. He thought he was about to have a Brian Still moment, right? Hold on, because this was actually really funny. He said, hold on. He thought he was about to have a Brian Still moment. Mark Agnifilo walked his own self into a trap. He said, you've worked with Diddy for 19 years. He was like, yeah, absolutely. He said, he said, in your 19 years, did you see anyone help Diddy with crimes? He said, no, sir. I said, mofo, you're the chief financial officer. If there are crimes, and if there are financial crimes, you might be an accomplice. So are you really the best person to ask? I mean, I'm not saying he's the accomplice, but I'm just saying, I was like, Mark, this is a dangerous line of questioning. And if that was me and my boss was on things for Rico and all that stuff, I've been like, why are you asking, did I ever see anyone help him commit crimes? I don't know nothing about this. Did you ever see him do any acts of violence? He hesitated. He was like, no, right? Then they said, right? Did you ever see any threats of violence? No. He said, see ya. He said, did you ever see any coercion? This was his answer. Can you explain that? He turned into me on the trial. Can you explain that? Mark Agnifilo, he still didn't realize. Mofo, he didn't want to say it. He said, can you explain what coercion means? Because your version of coercion might be different than my version of coercion, right? And then he was like, he said, might be different than my version of coercion. So then Mark Agnifilo was like, you know what? I'm sorry. Let me withdraw the question. I said, good thing, Mark, because you was about to, don't bring this Mark Agnifilo nonsense into this Brian Still victory for Mia, right? Anyway, he said, did you ever see Sean Diddy Combs do any emotional, physical? See ya, girl. I know tomorrow should be exciting. I love the loafers. Yeah, hopefully peaceful. Namaste, namaste. So listen, he was like, did you ever see any emotional, physical, or sexual abuse? I said, well, were you at the Holiday Inn, the motel? Like, what is going on, right? This wasn't Yeezy official because I think Yeezy would actually say, they said, did you ever see any signs of sex trafficking? I said, Mark, you are Kim right now. He said, what? Wait, come. You guys, we have an update. Jump in here. Mama, why don't you give your name?
Hi, I'm Mama Flip. How are you? Mama Flip Slot Channel. Love her. I've been watching it. I don't know what time you left. The decision that was made.
About the text messages.
About the
text
messages.
Yeah.
So after they left now, so they're gonna remove the screens. We can't see them at all.
Yeah, so they're removing. So this is about Jane. I'll tell you in a second. But go on.
I just want to make sure that you were just aware of it. They're
trying
to argue. They're trying to argue it right now.
Yeah.
And the decision is that the overflow room and the courts cannot see the texts and everything like that. So
Yes.
you have all that.
Yes, I did. But thank you, Mama Flip.
I just want to make sure that you have.
Thank you. See, this is why I love y'all, because y'all be making sure I get all the tea.
It's Friday, day 18 in the Diddy trial, and this is the recap after the lunch break. So Jane, former girlfriend of Sean's, is back on the stand, and she recalls a trip to New York where she was telling Sean she did not want to participate in any more hotel nights. When they arrived to the Trump Hotel, she said assistants were setting up the room for a hotel night. Of course, they started arguing. She said he was really defensive. She also testified that she had booked entertainers for hotel nights twice as a surprise for Sean because it was expected. I could read between the lines. He didn't have to tell me to do things. He would say, I can't wait to see what you have for me. I knew that meant I needed to set up a hotel night for him. When she was asked how she felt about Sean, she said, I loved him very deeply. I told him every day. Jane said that when she was with Sean, he had asked her to get her nips pierced because it turned him on. She said she had taken them out because they kept getting infected and bleeding, and he got upset with her. She also testified about how she had to get ready for these hotel nights. She said, I would have my nails, hair, and tan. I would have outfits and shoes ready, same type of shoes every night, high heel, stripper heels. I had them on the entire time. It was a lot. The baby oil would make my feet sticky and oily. Jane said she got urinary tract and yeast infections almost every week, and she would have to take antibiotics. And sometimes she couldn't fully recover before there'd be another hotel night. Diddy said he didn't know how Jane felt about hotel nights despite her telling him often. She says she told him repeatedly over and over again since 2021. She said when she would tell him, he would be upset, dismissive, and belittle her. In 2022, Jane had written him a note saying that she was done. You are hurtful and damaging to me. I have to go away from you because you have crossed too many lines. I am done being used by you. You leave it to me to clean up and recover on my own. Jane said she felt used after finding out that Diddy had taken another woman on a trip after their Turks and Caicos trip. When she confronted him, Sean said he didn't feel like he needed to tell her what he was doing with someone else. There were 15 photos shown to the jury. Apparently, they were explicit photos of Jane with other men from hotel nights. They said some jurors were closing their eyes or covering their face. After the Turks and Caicos trip, her and Sean had made like a contract that he was going to give her an allowance of $10,000 a month, which she was spending on rent for a new home. The prosecutor asked her, who's paying your rent now? She said Sean. One thing I find interesting, and I'm not trying to be insensitive, but her attorneys apparently were asking the judge to put a gag order in place to help protect her identity. But I'm sorry, if you have Google or you follow pop culture, hip hop culture during that time period, you know who she is. Your baby daddy outed you on social media. Like, a gag order at this time, I think is unnecessary. She also testified that Sean apparently paid for her veneers because he didn't like her teeth. She then testified about a time that Sean got mad at her. She
Yeah.
didn't want to do a hotel night because she got her period. And he's like, F you for real, leave me alone. And she's like, I've been giving you hotel nights for 2.5 years. I'm not a liar, cheater, or Smex robot. We need to have a serious talk about everything. They then played a message in court that Sean had left her. And this is because she didn't want to do a hotel night. He's like, I'm not playing around with you. You're going to have a rude awakening. You got me on my job. It will never work like that over here. You need to get on your job. Basically, meaning I'm taking care of you, so you need to take care of me. He's like, I'm trying to be clear. I'm going to disappear on you. At this point, they wrap up for the day. She will be back on the stand Monday morning.
Okay, I'm going to do something naughty and see if I can see who she is. Oh, look like it's up here. This her? She did not secretly marry. Is Dana Jane? Did he date in? Did he date in 22? Maybe. Alright, so we've got his whole dating history here. So it was J-Lo. You know, a lot of people are saying that J-Lo was dealing with a lot of this BS too. I wonder if J-Lo's going to make an appearance. Okay. So his 50th birthday. So, Kim Porter. Rest in peace. J-Lo. Who's this? Sarah. Okay. I don't remember her. This is 17. Looks him young, don't he? Because they all look drastically younger than him. Okay, his 50th birthday bash with Laurie Harvey. The Vanity Fair and L'Oreal. She's gorgeous. When was this? Oh, that was 2019. Oh, that might be the same person, maybe? Let's see. Who's this? Young Miami. Oh. This is 2023. Miami attended Met Gala celebrating were first linked in 2021. Donna confirmed their relationship in 2022 and appeared on the podcast We Date. He responded to Young Miami. Justin, what was? So what are we? Oh, so what we is? My brain couldn't comprehend that that text. We're dating. We go have dates. We're friends. We go to exotic locations. We have a great time. So I guess it's Young Miami then. Oh wait, no, then there's Dana. Diddy and Dana Tran with their daughter. Though Combs hasn't confirmed a relationship with Dana Tran, who I say is a security professional in the industry. That was October 22. Yeah, I don't know how. So it's either Young Miami or this Dana chick. Maybe I should try another one. What did he did in 22? Let's type in 23. Jane unsuccessfully tries to end hotel night. James comes to testify. That'd be Young Miami. Why would she need tan? Why would she need tan? Miami's got a gorgeous complexion. Yeah, bye-bye. After having a baby with David. Cassie, what on off on off? Girlfriend. Oh, okay, maybe it was. His new baby mama identified. Revealed as not his current girlfriend. Yeah, bye-bye. After having a baby with David. Cassie, what on off on off? I honestly, and it may just be, this is Young Miami. I don't understand why she would need tan. Look at her complexion, she's gorgeous. And he's still paying for her rent and she testified. That's how bad. That's how you know that this is bad, guys.
Here's what happened on day 18 of the Diddy trial. Victim Jane resumed her testimony and she brought receipts. The jury saw and heard a video of her during the freak-offs asking other men to wear a condom, but Diddy said no. The videos are important because you hear Diddy's own voice. It's not just the victims saying they were coerced. Diddy recorded the videos on his cell phone for his own sexual pleasure and to maintain control over the participants, but now they're being used as evidence against him. Jane cried during the freak-offs and on the witness stand. Jane also had text messages where she said to Diddy that she did not want to participate in the hotel nights or have sex with other men. This is important because the defense cross-examined Cassie on emails and text messages in which she said she loved the freak-offs. Jane didn't have those same messages, and she also wrote notes in her iPhone about how she was being used by Diddy. Diddy threatened to stop paying Jane's rent if she didn't participate, and she got UTIs and yeast infections because of the hotel nights. Like Cassie, Diddy controlled the way Jane looked, and he told her to get her nipples pierced and demanded that she put them back in when she took them out. Jane also said Diddy watched her have sex with 3 men on the same night on her birthday. That's the first time we've heard about multiple men in the freak-off. Jane said Diddy's employees would bring drugs and cash into the hotel rooms during the freak-offs. That makes them co-conspirators in the sex trafficking, racketeering, and prostitution. Jane said she entered into a 2-year love contract with Diddy. She was paid $10,000 a month, which she used on rent. Jane said Diddy is still paying her rent, and he paid for her veneers. The defense will likely argue that Jane was essentially a prostitute and that she wasn't forced to do the freak-offs. If the defense loses on prostitution but wins on sex trafficking, that's a big win for Diddy.
Well, guys, what do you think? Comment below. Do you think the jury lost me, or do you think that she gave enough of a testimony on day one? We are still unsure how long court is going to take, because initially they said it was going to be shorter, but it may actually extend past, excuse me, it may actually extend past the July 5th date, which unfortunately for the jurors, because they do get paid a pittance unless they're unemployed, then of course I guess they're happy that they're getting a check. But luckily for us, a member of the team that you haven't seen on screen yet, which is known to you as Mark, but to us he is our dad. He is doing a lot of the research behind the scenes, but once the Diddy trial is over, we will be posting more of our creepy videos with a history and a little pinch of ghost hunting, if we find anything, that is. But we are working on that series behind the scenes, and it takes a lot of research, and our dad is our research team. If it's to be found, he will find it, for sure. But he will be making an appearance in those videos closer to. He was originally going to do this video with me, but he doesn't really know too much about P. Diddy because he's a rock fan. But thank you for grabbing a brew with me today, and join us next week for week 5 of the Diddy updates. Please, please, please like and subscribe, comment. It helps our channel grow. And email us with anything you want to suggest or reaction videos for myself and Jody. As Jody would say, make sure you put it in the description bar that it is a reaction video, otherwise not mentioning any names will open it and ruin it. It's me, I'm the problem, it's me. But anyway, guys, if you want us to react to anything, go ahead. The email's at the bottom of the screen, but it is grabyourbrew@gmail.com. Have an amazing week. Bye.